Yay! So today we're going to be talking about character facial expressions, but before we get into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about basic anatomy, make sure we're all on the same page. All right, so when we're drawing humans, there are certain rules we learn about proportion. Obviously, these things do not apply to everybody because we all look different, we all have different proportions, and of course, cartoon characters break those proportions even more, but we do need to know the rules before we can break them. All right, so the first one is called the rule of halves, which is that halfway between the top and bottom of the head is where we find the eyes. Halfway between the eyes and the bottom of the head is where we find the nose. And halfway between the nose and the bottom of the head is where we find the mouth. So you're just continually dividing the head in half and then in half again and then in half again. The next thing is that we want to make sure that there is an eye's width between our two eyes. Now, this may be the one that you break the soonest because cartoon characters obviously have very exaggerated eyes, but again, we need to know the rules before we break the rules. All right, so the next one is that if you draw a line down from the corners of the eyes, that's where you will find the corners of the mouth. Our mouth is about the same width as the distance between our eyes. All right, next, the top of the ears is in line with our eye level. And finally, our eyebrows connect to the top of our nose bridge. This one you'll see shorthanded a lot. All right, so now that we're on the same page with all of those, let's talk a little bit about hats and hair. So we all know by now that we have to draw our characters naked before we draw clothes on them to make sure we have proper anatomy. Similarly, we draw our characters bald before we add hats or hair to them to make sure we have the body structure correctly before adding details like hair. All right, so let's talk a little bit about expressions and how to gather our reference material for expressions. You and your friends are your best resource for this. I just like to put on a video in photo booth and do a bunch of poses, bunch of different expressions, and then try to collect details I've seen in myself. All right, so let's talk a little bit about an angry expression. So the first thing we're going to notice is that eyebrows get pulled straight down. I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? But what you want to remember is that our eyes don't stay in the same position when our eyebrows get pulled down. They get sort of squished up into a more narrow shape. You can practice this right now. Frown. And you'll notice that your eyebrows come down, but your cheeks also squish your eyes up a little bit from the bottom. We see our pupils getting covered up a little bit more than they were, sort of glaring out of the tops of the eyes. And we also have our nostrils flaring a little bit. So you're going to notice I'm making little edits as I go along, and that's what you should be doing in digital art. You know, just grab something with a lasso tool, drag it around. Oh, it doesn't look good there. Redraw it. We should never be drawing our final lines when we go to draw characters. We should be doing sketch upon sketch upon sketch, layered on top of each other. So I didn't like how wide her mouth was here. I wanted a little bit more of a, like a small little frown rather than like a big wide one. And you can tell just that difference gave her a different kind of angry expression. All right, so yeah, let's recap what we did to go from this left neutral expression to a right angry expression. We have our narrowed eyes, our dropped brows. We have more of the pupil covered. We have our flared nostril. And we have this like hard, tight little line of a mouth. When we're angry, our muscles really tighten up, and that's why we have that small little frown mouth there. All right, let's move on to another expression. Let's talk a little bit about surprise. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag over my neutral expression, reduce the opacity, and start drawing on top of it. So with this expression, our character's mouth is going to be open. So now we need to talk about the jaw hinge. So right about the level of your ear, you can feel that's where your lower jaw connects to your face. And when your mouth is closed, that's when we're drawing neutral expressions. When our mouth is open, because we're singing, talking, screaming, shocked, whatever, our face gets longer, right? Because our mouth drops open. So if you draw a character with a wide open mouth without making their face longer, it's going to look very strange. So make sure whenever your character's mouth is open, their face gets longer because that jaw has opened up. All right, so for our shocked eyes, we want to be opening those eyes wider. And we do that both by changing the shape of the eye, they're nice and tall, but we also show a lot more of the white visible around the pupil. There's probably no bigger indicator of emotion than where the whites of our eyes are. Are they above the pupil, below the pupil? Are they visible all the way around the pupil? It immediately changes the expression we're seeing. All right, so of course, hallmark of surprise, we have these really, really pulled up eyebrows. And there's lots of different ways to do surprised eyebrows. You can do skeptical surprise, where one eyebrow is higher than the other. You can do scared surprise, where they're, really disappearing up into the forehead. And I want to add a little bit more acting here. So I'm going to add a hand over the face. And I'm going to do this on a new layer because I do everything on new layers because it's just so much easier to drag it around, make edits if you need to. Yeah, you can see like this. I didn't like the position it was in. And also it just lets me, just like when I'm sketching anything else, do a really rough, blocky gesture first. Okay, so having our hand covering part of the face here just adds a lot more acting, a lot more nuance to the expression because we act with our whole bodies, right? And you'll notice that when you are taking these reference photos and these reference videos of yourself, you're doing things that you didn't even realize you would be doing. That's why it's so important to work from life rather than just from what you think a surprised person looks like. So just noting here, when we open our jaw wide open, right, our cheeks hollow out because all of a sudden there's all this extra open space there with our jaw open. So just remember, I think the main takeaways drawing expressions are take lots of reference. Videos can be better than still photos because you can get a lot of different angles, a lot of different options, and you don't need to pose it just right to make it in time for a selfie. Use hands and body language to act, and make sure you are watching what happens with your eyebrows, the whites of your eyes, your nose, and the just the bone structure of your face as your mouth opens and closes. All right, hope this was helpful.